They're gay, by the way. Hi! Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome in, welcome back. My name is Brooke, aka Brooksmoon. I hope you're doing okay. I don't know how much of the construction you can hear that's happening outside right now, but it's kind of loud, so if you can't hear it, I'm really sorry. This video is kind of insane. I've been working on this video for the past month, and it's actually so crazy because a YouTuber that I am really fond of, Uncarly, actually uploaded a video about this yesterday, and I had no idea until I saw it this morning. She's great, her video is awesome. It's definitely a lot shorter than this one is going to be. Highly recommend watching her video, but also watch this one, please, because I put a lot of love into this. You're here for one of two reasons. One, you are a Marauders fan, and you just want to watch me descend into madness as I try to explain the ridiculousness that is this fandom. Or two, your mentally ill best friend sent you this video and is forcing you to watch it because they want you to understand why they are crying over fan edits of actors who have never been in a movie together at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Regardless of why you are here, hi, welcome in. I'm going to be yapping about my hyperfixation that's kind of gotten me into a death grip the past 2 years, even though I have loosely been part of this fandom for a very, very long time. And if you're someone who knows me personally and you are watching this, you are about to see the fangirl side of me that you've probably not seen before. You know who you are. Have fun witnessing this. That's all I gotta say. I want to give a quick disclaimer before I get into this video. I'm going to be talking about the Marauders lore that exists within this fandom and on the internet. There is no way that I'm going to be able to hit everything. It is going to be pretty extensive, not extensive enough to be able to cover everything. This fandom is vast. There is a lot that is within this fandom. I genuinely don't want anyone in the comments attacking me for something that I missed or don't talk too highly about. This is also a work of my own personal opinions in addition to just trying to share some of the more common things that exist within this fandom. If I do miss something that you wanted me to talk about, please don't take it personally. I might make a part 2 to this video. I haven't decided yet. If there is something that you want me to go more in depth about later on in a separate video, I will. Just make sure to comment those things because I will more than likely look into it. It's just not fully possible to be able to include everything. We would literally be here for years. I'm not even kidding. Please don't attack me or anyone else that may have differing opinions than you. That's the beauty of fandom and the beauty of this fandom especially. People have difference of opinions and there is a lot of conflict within the fandom, but please don't attack anybody in my comments. Be nice to each other. We are a peaceful bunch here, okay? None of us are cooler than one another. We obsess over dead fictional wizards from the 70s. That half of the shit didn't even happen. So, that being said, let's get into this. So what the hell is a marauder anyway? Asked no sane person ever. Marauders is a subgroup within the Harry Potter fandom that originated with the characters around Harry's parents. So that would be James Potter, Lily Evans, Remus Lupin, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew. This is taking place in that period of time when they were in Hogwarts, so very much way before Harry was even born, but leading into Harry being born. Almost everything in this fandom is completely made up. The Marauders fandom is kind of like a giant group project where all of us just kind of build on top of each other, and it has evolved over the years. Kind of originated in the depths of Tumblr where people would not talk about this fandom or at all within the Harry Potter fandom. But now, because of TikTok and the way that it has kind of exploded on there, it has gotten a lot bigger and a lot more extensive than it was before. It used to just be the core four and Lily, with a little bit of the other characters sprinkled in, but the opinions of those characters were very different from what they are now. So all of these characters are so minor in the original Harry Potter text. This fandom took minor details about a character and created a whole different version of them, which to me is insane but also very impressive. So why on earth does this whole entire subgroup of a fandom exist with minor characters that are barely mentioned in the original text? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that JK Racist is a transphobic bitch. A lot of the fans that exist within the Marauders fandom are people who grew up with Harry Potter when they were younger, and then as they got older and realized that JK Rowling is actually the worst person alive and the transphobic rhetoric that she is spewing is absolute garbage. They then took characters that existed within the Harry Potter fandom but then made them their own. This was kind of a way of going against her and including a ton more representation, especially queer representation, but also diversifying the cracker white cast that she has within her books. It was kind of an act of rebellion, I say that very loosely, against her wishes, because she absolutely despises 90% of the stuff that people have come up with because, you know, she hates trans and gay people. Don't even start with the Dumbledore is gay nonsense, okay? She did that to prove that she's not homophobic, which she is, by the way. Fan canon or fanon exists in every fandom that has ever graced the internet. That's just something that happens. Fandoms are made up of very, very creative people, and they take these characters and make them their own in their own way. But the Marauders fandom took fanon to a whole nother level that most fandoms have not done. The percentage of stuff that is made up by fans that is considered fanon outweighs what is actually canon within the Harry Potter universe. And it adds a whole nother layer of, like I said, diversity, but also creativity to take these characters that barely have a personality to then fleshing them out into these full-fledged characters that a bunch of people just keep building on top of. Marauders fans are some of the most creative people I know that have literally written some of the best pieces of fan fiction that exists on the internet, that have created beautiful pieces of art, as well as all of these editors who are taking fan casts of characters that have never existed within the same movie or TV show before, and then editing it in a way to make it look like it is real. Those are real creative skills that people have gained by being part of this fandom, and to me, it's actually insane. Now that you've got the gist, let's kind of get into the thick of it. The way that I'm setting up this video is kind of similar to a Wattpad fanfiction. Shut up, don't say anything. Fully exposing teenage me at the moment. So I'm going to be starting with the characters that exist within this universe versus starting with the timeline. Many years ago, there was this trend that happened on Wattpad where if you were reading a fan fiction, they would have like the introduction chapter and then like a cast of characters chapter where you have like gifs of the fan casts of these characters and like little descriptions of them, and then you get into the actual story. That's kind of how this is going to be set up. I don't need to expose teenage me even more on that front, so you get the gist. So I'm going to give you kind of a rundown of each character and who they are and what that means, in addition to some of the ships that are very, very popular within this fandom. And then I'm going to go into the timeline. The way that I have the timeline set up is I'm going to be following the fanon timeline that many people in this fandom consider canon, but there are a lot of things within that timeline that are canon to the Harry Potter universe. I will be pointing out the things that are actually canon versus what is fanon, but for the most part, please just assume that what I am saying, unless stated otherwise, is fanon. This is stuff that has been made up by the fans of this fandom that has evolved into me now creating this video. Hello, it's me from another angle and with a new shirt. Can you tell me my favorite marauder is? Just take a guess. Also, I'm on my bed, so if this board is moving around a lot, I'm sorry, I had nowhere else to film this video because this thing is humongous. It's just a symbol of my mental health, and the level of work that I put into this video is all right here, okay? It looks like a lot, because it is, and we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna tell you about all of these characters and how they're all connected and why this marauder board looks the way that it does. So we're gonna start with the first marauder, that is James Potter. James Potter is the only child of Euphemia or Effie Potter and Fleamont or Monty Potter, and he is a pureblood and also a nepo baby. I hate to be the first one to tell you that any of the pureblood kids are considered nepo babies. James is also one of them, by the way. Full name is James Fleamont Potter, aka Prongs, aka also known as Jamie. He is the himbo golden retriever jock friend. He's also the mom friend. We've established that he is also the mom friend for the most part. The Potters are actually considered blood traitors during the war because, you know, they're purebloods and they don't hate muggleborns because, oh my god, what if you're a pureblood and you love muggleborns? You're a blood traitor, because fascism exists in the wizarding world. It's also often headcanon that James is Desi or Latino, which is why Monty is usually seen as Oscar Isaac in this fandom. but it really just depends on who you're talking to. This is a very popular headcanon, though, because it was a way for the fandom to diversify a character who is canonically seen as white along with all of the other characters in this fandom, because, you know, JK racist. But a lot of the time, if you see fan art of James, he is darker skinned because he is seen as Desi or Latino, and sometimes you see him as speaking Spanish because Monty is Hispanic. I fully support and I love seeing Desi and also Latino James. James is also a huge Quidditch bro. This man lives and breathes the sport. It's all he talks about. He will not shut up about it. He eventually does become Quidditch captain his 7th year at Hogwarts, and he is the seeker on the Quidditch team. Also headcanon that eventually he becomes head boy, which like would happen in his 7th year and show that he's like super matured. James was always considered the token straight and the ally friend because he would always be dating Lily Evans, but that has recently changed in the later half of the Marauders fandom when Jegulus popped up, which I will be talking about a little bit later on in this video. The token straight thing is still sometimes seen in fics, but less common now because of Jegulus, but again, I will get there when I get there. Often seen as the troublemaker or the Quidditch lad, but he has a lot of complex thoughts about what it means to do the right thing. Commonly seen as like a hero because he saves Sirius from his family, and also he tries to do it with Regulus when we get to the Jegulus stuff. So he's very much like the hero of the wizarding world, and he wants to do the right thing all the time, which is part of the reason why he ends up joining the Order when he graduates school and the war is going on. So said that a lot of Harry's like stupid bravery comes from James, because James will just run into a situation head on without thinking about the consequences of his actions if it means that he's doing the quote-unquote right thing. He is a troublemaker. He causes mischief. He's an extrovert. He's very loud. He can be a lot sometimes, but that's okay. We still love him anyway. He is an animagus, which is a stag, which is also his patronus, and he is canonically murdered by Voldemort when he faces him on Halloween of 1981. This is also often symbolized with red Converse. I cannot tell you where or why this popped up. It just does exist. It's something that you will see very commonly in cosplayers and also just in general when it comes to symbolism of James. This has also manifested itself into becoming the Lightning McQueen Crocs. That was a headcanon I learned about when I was getting research for this video and asking the Marauders fandom for things to include. It was one of them. Don't ask me why, but it does make sense. He would wear them unironically. Like I said, James is also the mom friend. He will do anything and everything it means to protect his friends, even if it means bullying someone unforgivingly for years. A lot of the time you will see James fan casted as a few different people. The original one was Aaron Taylor Johnson, which is why I put him on the board. Also, he is the one that you see a lot of the time in fan edits of James. Like I said, with the Latino Desi headcanon that exists, there's been a few different face claims that appear all of the time. One is Reiki de Valk, R.I.P. to him, may he rest in peace. Ivan Joya, who is also a very common one, and also Dev Patel, the love of my life. Also many others that are super niche that I'm not even going to include in here, but you will see variations of different James fan casts if the more you dig into this fandom. That goes for all of these characters though. We're going to move on to the next Marauder, which is Sirius Black. Sirius Orion Black, also known as Pads, also known as Padfoot, aka the disgraced heir to the Black family fortune. Sirius is the eldest son to Walpurga and Orion Black and the older brother to Regulus Black. He is also the cousin of Andromeda, Bellatrix, and Narcissa Black. The Black family lore is a whole separate video on its own. I'm not even going to touch upon it because it's very, very complicated and there's a lot to it. They're like one of the higher pure blood families and also fascists. They support this guy down here. The Blacks are commonly seen as a French family within the fandom. They're not canonically, but in the fandom they are. So Sirius and Regulus both know how to speak French because Orion taught them French, but Sirius very rarely ever speaks it. And also, newsflash, they suck as parents. The Blacks, terrible parents. The Potters, amazing. The Blacks, however, trigger warning, emotionally, physically, and mentally abuse Sirius, and they disown him throughout his entire life, and it really does start when he is sorted into Gryffindor and then just casually gets worse because he does not want to do what they want him to do, aka support Voldemort and take the Dark Mark. He doesn't want to do that. He knows that they're evil. He doesn't want to be part of that at all. However, the two of them cannot accept that because he is the eldest. He is the heir to the Black family fortune, so he has to hold up their image, but he chooses not to. Canon that Sirius does run away when he is 16 years old, which I will be touching upon later in this video. Going back to Sirius at Hogwarts, he is also a Quidditch guy. He is on the team with James and commonly seen as a beater on the Quidditch team for the most part. He's very, very smart, kind of like effortlessly smart, and he's super posh. He is a cotillion kid. Because of the Black family being as high regarded as they are like considered super posh and fancy. So Sirius is a cotillion kid and knows how to ballroom dance, knows what all the fancy little spoons are for, and also the little forks. His entire self-image starts to deter away from that, hence like the leather jackets, the tattoos, the smoking, the motorcycle, all of that stuff is a way for him to break away from the stereotype that his family holds. There's also an animagus that is a black dog, which is where the name Padfoot comes from. It is also his Patronus. His Patronus is also the black dog. 5th year is a big time for Sirius. That's when he finally runs away. That's when he betrays Remus, which I, again, will be getting into later. He has a very complex relationship with his brother, but he does love Regulus. Regulus is his baby brother, and he does everything that he can to protect Regulus from their terrible parents. That is just something that you see over and over again, and their entire relationship is completely devastating because of how terrible that their parenting was. It then transformed into this very sad relationship that the two of them have. Sirius is eventually framed for the death of Lily and James Potter, as well as Peter Pettigrew and a few bunch of muggles that get injured, and he is sent to Azkaban, and then breaks out in Harry's 3rd year, as you know, from Prisoner of Azkaban. Sirius is often symbolized with leather jackets, tattoos, smoking, a motorcycle. He is a bad boy himbo, essentially, or that's what he tries to show himself as. Commonly fan casted as Ben Barnes. There are a few different ones. The most common one that I see that is different from Ben Barnes is Conan Gray, which is a very interesting choice. In terms of like edits and stuff, you will mainly see Ben Barnes, hence why he is on this board. Also, Ben Barnes does know about this. So does Aaron Taylor Johnson, so does Andrew Garfield, so does a few other people who were fan casted as the Marauders. Firmly believes that he is Sirius Black, which I think is part of the funnier effects of this fandom, is that these famous people know about the ridiculousness of us fan casting them in something that doesn't even exist. And now we're going to move on to my favorite Marauder, Remus Lupin. Remus John Lupin, aka Moony, aka Moons, aka Looney Lupin, aka a lot of other nicknames. This man has a lot of nicknames. I'm not even gonna lie. There's a list. So the love of my life, Sirius, back off. I will bite you. Remus is the only son to Lyle and Hope Lupin, and he was bitten by Fenrir Greyback when he was young after Lyle Lupin passed a ministry law that goes against werewolves. Almost like every fan fiction that you will read, Remus's parents are like terrible people, which I kind of want to break this stereotype. Lyle regrets what he said in front of Greyback, which then made him retaliate against his son. So I kind of want to fight back on this and just say they were trying their best. Okay? Remus is a half-blood, though, because his mother, Hope, is a muggle and Lyle is a wizard. A lot of the time, the reason why Lyle is seen as, like, a terrible father is because he can't cope with the fact that Remus got bit when he was younger and he, like, blames himself forever. Trigger warning. Sometimes takes his own life and or is just a very bad absent father, but I hate that headcanon so much because I just don't think it's fair. But a lot of the time you will see Remus as having a very bad relationship with his dad, and or his dad is dead, and or he is an orphan. He is accepted into Hogwarts even though he is a werewolf because he comes from a wizard background, but the Whomping Willow is put on Hogwarts grounds because of Remus, and underneath it is a pathway that leads to the Shrieking Shack where he is allowed to transform into his werewolf form every single month. The people who do know about the fact that he is a werewolf is Dumbledore, obviously, McGonagall, for obvious reasons, because he is sorted into Gryffindor, and Poppy Pomfrey, who becomes his at Hogwarts mom, essentially. Poppy is the one to take care of Remus after every single full moon before the Marauders all turn into anime guy, but she also is the one who is taking care of him even after that fact. He's a bit of a loner. He's like kind of commonly seen as like a soft boy, and that was way before a bunch of fanfictions changed the characterization of his character, but for the most part he was seen as like a soft boy who like wore sweaters and drank tea and read books and all of that stuff. However, that slowly has shifted over the years. He's also commonly seen as someone with dyslexia and chronic pain. He has a lot of issues with his hip because of his transformations from being a werewolf. He's also commonly seen with a cane. So he is seen with both being dyslexic and or illiterate, depending on which fic you're reading. He's commonly seen as coming from like a lower class for the most part, which explains the illiteracy. But once he gets past the being dyslexic and stuff because of spells, he is able to, he just reads all the time, constantly. No matter, nothing can stop him from reading books. He is not a Quidditch fan. This man does not like the sport. He doesn't understand it. He reads books, guys. He's not a jock. He reads books. The two things can't be true. The reason he even knows anything about Quidditch is because he's friends with the Quidditch dude, and also the one that he's in love with plays Quidditch as well. So usually if he's at Quidditch practice watching them, he's doing homework like a nerd, because he likes to read, guys. He's also considered the Casanova of Gryffindor Tower, which is crazy. He is Rizmus Lupin. He's got some like crazy riz, bro, and nobody understands why or how. I do. He's just himself. On the flip side, he is also seen as having a very short fuse and temper. He has very bad mood swings because he is a werewolf and his moods are controlled by the moon. Which to me makes a lot of sense. Like, I get it. He is the person who comes up with the idea for the map, which is why his name is first on the map. He is the original creator and or the person who comes up with the idea of the Marauders map. He is one of the two to survive without being killed or wrongfully imprisoned during the First War. It's him and then Mary McDonald are the only other ones to survive. He's sent on special missions during the war to go see what the werewolves know, because they side with Voldemort for the most part. So a lot of the time he is on those special missions as a werewolf undercover for the Order. There's also a very common headcanon that during the war Peter plants the seed that Remus could be the spy because he's gone all the time, but in reality he's just getting information from the werewolves for Dumbledore. So that's always a fun headcanon that's thrown into this fandom. He is symbolized with a lot of things. This dude literally is like the token of this fandom, and also I love him so much. He is often seen with the Moony toast, which is specifically from All the Young Dudes. It is a piece of toast that's cut into fours, and each piece of the toast has a different topping on it. He's also commonly seen as a Bowie fan and like really loves Muggle rock music, and is part of the reason why the rest of the Marauders like rock music, and also Mars bars because he loves chocolate, and this one specifically is what pops up a lot of the time in the fandom. I can't remember what fic it originated from, but it was a fan fiction that is the reason why Mars bars are such a big popular symbol for him specifically. Most commonly fan casted as Andrew Garfield and younger David Lewis, who played Remus in Prisoner of Azkaban. More often than not, you will see him as Andrew Garfield, love of my life. But there are also more niche fan casts that exist for him, with like French actors and other European actors that if I listed them all out, we would be here for a very, very long time. Andrew tends to be the most popular one, hence why he is on the board. We're moving on to the last Marauder, and that is Peter Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew, aka Pete, aka Petey, aka Wormtail, aka the one who gets shit on when he is a child far too much. You guys are way too mean to him when he is young. Older Peter can kick rocks. Younger Peter did nothing wrong, dude. Peter's parents are very rarely, like, mentioned in this fandom, which is why I did not put them on the board, because I tried really hard to find, like, solid proof of what his parents' names were, and just kept coming up with different answers, so I just excluded them altogether. He's often headcanoned as having an older sister, being the youngest of his sisters, and often seen as either a pureblood or a half-blood, but for the most part he is always seen as growing up near the Potters. So the Potters and the Pettigrews are like long-term family friends, hence why Peter and James are such good friends going into Hogwarts. It's also a very popular headcanon that the Pettigrews have a lot of squibs in their family, which are non-magic folk, people who are born into a wizard family but don't have the ability to use magic, which kind of plays into Peter's character of being the way that he is and why he tries really, really hard in school, and it just kind of every time he kind of can't do something, he panics a little bit because he thinks that he's just going to be a squib or something. In addition to being headcanon to be childhood friends with James, it's also headcanon that he's childhood friends with Marlene McKinnon, which then leads into the more devastating headcanons that exist within this fandom that I'm going to touch upon later. None of us are happy here. We're all very, very sad people. Canonically, Peter is the Secret Keeper for Lily and James Potter, and he is also the spy for the Death Eaters, and the reason why Lily and James end up dying to the hand of Voldemort. It's argued a lot in this fandom as to why Peter does what he does, and there's a combination of a bunch of things as to the reason why. One being that Peter is kind of seen as this, like, he is a member of the Marauders, but he is commonly seen outside of them. He's the quieter of the 4 Marauders, and it seemed that he kind of just like latches onto them, but Remus is seen the same way. It's just a little bit different, I guess. Like, he gets like left out of things, which I don't believe for a second. I truly believe that the 3 of them loved Peter so very much, which is like why other would Lily and James trust him to be their secret keeper if they didn't care about him. They were friends, y'all. Like, they cared about Peter. That's why the betrayal hurts as much as it did. He was one of their best friends. They loved him. Also, the fact that, like, people believe that he was corrupted by the Death Eaters during the war and joined out of fear because he thought that they would kill his family and friends, and eventually he just does it anyway. And also that once he became a Death Eater, that he realized how much power the Death Eaters have, because the Order kind of suffers a lot during the First War, and so Voldemort's promising a whole lot of power to people, and because Peter is like so insecure, he's like, oh my god, I can be powerful, that's crazy, and then it goes to his head the second he realizes that he has that type of power. I think it's a combination of all 3 of those things, but isn't like a definite reason why he does what he does to betray Lily and James. A lot of the time the fandom's just like, he was insecure and thought the Marauders hated him, but I don't think that argument makes any sense whatsoever. I really do just think that he was corrupted by power and promise during the war and joined out of fear because he really did think that he would have been hurt severely, and then once he realized what that power was like, he became addicted to it, which happens to people. He became the worst version of himself. He tries very, very hard in school. He tries to be super, super smart, but he has to work extremely hard to even get where he is. He's often seen as very like meek and small and insecure and like the quieter of the Marauders, but he's still loved by them. He is their friend. He wouldn't have been on that map and included in their schemes if he wasn't. If they hated him, he wouldn't have been involved in a lot of stuff. Peter is also an animagus, and his animagus form is a rat, which, like, oh my god, crazy, mind-blowing. Like, he's an animagus. His animagus is a rat, because he is one. Dude, I hate J.K. Rowling so much. Anyway, also commonly symbolized with chess, which I think is very fun, more fun symbolism, because he eventually just becomes a pawn in Voldemort's game, and he's really good at chess, so you would think that he would see what was happening. Obviously not. Young Pete is very different from War Pete. I think that they are 2 completely different characters. Their character arcs are very, very different. I think who Peter is when he is at Hogwarts with the Marauders is not the person he is when he is in the war. Peter was originally fan cast as Dane DeHaan, but because Peter is canonically a heavier character, a lot more people have been fan casting him with face claims that look like that. So more common than not, you will see Louis Capaldi, Jeremy Dozier, or also Cooper Hoffman, who is the person I put on this board because he's my favorite. Next, we are going to be talking about the girlies of the Marauders fandom. They are also often referred to as the Valkyries because they are badass women, and I love every single one of them. The girls in the fandom do not get enough recognition, and there's a lot of like misogyny in this fandom. Don't even try to argue with me if you are a Marauders fan. You know I'm right. Female characters in this fandom are not regarded as highly as the 4 Marauders are, and also some of the Death Eater characters. They're often disregarded or seen as like getting in the way of the popular gay ships, which in my opinion is absolutely ludicrous. The female characters, especially Lily, get torn apart constantly in this fandom, and they shouldn't, because they are amazing characters and also super complex and fantastic, and I love them so very much. I'm going to explain to you why you should love them just as much as I love them, okay? We're now moving on. So we're going to start off with Lily Evans, aka Lily Potter, later on down the line, aka Lils, aka Oi Evans, is what James says to her all the time, constantly. She's the prettiest girl around. I love her so very much. She is a Muggle-born, and she is the younger sister to Petunia Evans, who I forgot to put on this board, but we're going to ignore that. Born to 2 Muggle parents in the working class family, and she is childhood friends with Severus Snape. This is canon. Snape and Lily grow up together because his family is also coming from the working class, even though he is a wizard. Lily gets her letter to go to Hogwarts. Her parents are super, super excited because they have a witch in the family. Petunia kind of resents her for it. Evan-sister relationship often mirrors the black brother relationship in this fandom, but the girlies don't get talked about enough, and I could make a whole separate video talking about the comparisons between the two, which I have on TikTok before. So, you know, there's a lot of crossover in this fandom that exists, and a lot of parallels as well. The downfall of Lily and her sister's relationship just continues throughout the years because Lily is away at school and Petunia is at home with her parents, and a lot of the time Lily's parents are headcanoned to pass away while Lily is at school, and Petunia is the one to have to deal with all of that stuff, which is part of the reason why their relationship is so strained. Even though Lily is at school and away from her family, she excels. She is extremely smart when it comes to potions, that she ends up being in one of Slughorn's top students. That is canon. You learn about that in the Half-Blood Prince. Gets sorted into Gryffindor, and Severus gets sorted into Slytherin, so there's kind of a rift between their friendship from the beginning. She does not like the Marauders at first at all because of how much they bully Snape, and Snape is like her one true friend going into Hogwarts that she knows well. Super caring, she's super sweet. The people that are close to her know it because she loves them unconditionally, but she also will tell you how it is and stands up for what she believes in. And she's constantly blowing James off at the beginning of their year because she thinks he is arrogant and has a huge ego, which is part of the reason why she blows him off for so long, but then realizes eventually that like he actually isn't that, and that but once James starts growing up, she realizes that he's not super ignorant and he's just an idiot at the end of the day. She becomes prefect and eventually becomes head girl, and like I said, is one of Slughorn's top students. She is part of the Slug Club as well, and potions and all of her other classes, and she's just very, very smart. She does really, really well at Hogwarts. Until the later years that she becomes actually good friends with the Marauders, and the reason that being is because she becomes close friends with Remus, then later on becoming better friends with the rest of them. For the most part, she sticks to her friendships within the Gryffindor community, which is Mary McDonald and Marley McKinnon. They are her dorm mates, as well as Dorcas Meadows. Dorcas pops up a lot there too. After leaving Hogwarts, Lily does join the Order alongside James, Remus, Peter, and Sirius. She ends up marrying James and giving birth to Harry at a very, very young age, which is why it is headcanon commonly that Harry was not a planned baby at all, considering Lily's characterization. This girl plans everything. She is a type A person. There is no way in hell that she decided to have a baby during a wizarding war where she is regarded as nothing was a good idea. There's no way that Harry was planned. I'm sorry. He was an accident. He was 20. There's no way that this was planned. Harry unconditionally, that is her baby boy. She would do anything for him, and it is her motherly love that protects Harry in the end from dying to Voldemort's hand. Also, a very common headcanon that exists in this fandom to add to more diversity is plus-size Lily, and I love her so very much. adds more to body positivity within this fandom. And to me, it's a really great headcanon. I love seeing it in fan art. It makes me so incredibly happy. Also, Lily being like, because she's a ginger, is commonly mistaken as a Weasley, which I think is really, really funny, as well as having like a bunch of freckles and stuff. She's just a cutie pie. She's a little cutie. She has been fan casted as so many people. Sophie Skelton is a very big one, in addition to Annalise Basso, who is a more recent one, as well as Karen Gillian. Like, any redhead actress that is white is commonly fan casted as Lily Evans. Let's just put it that way. We are going to be moving on to Marlene McKinnon, aka Marls. She gets referred to as Marls a lot. So underappreciated. It makes me so mad because I love her so much. She is me, I am her. We are the same. Marlene is commonly headcanoned to be a half-blood. She is also headcanoned to be childhood friends of James and Peter. It's also headcanon that she has an older brother who ends up dying in the war, and also sometimes seen as being bit by a werewolf later on down the line, but that really just depends on fics. She's also on the Gryffindor Quidditch team. She is a Quidditch goddess. She's so great at it. She's awesome. Well, I laps around James if she wanted to, but she doesn't. She's very loud, rebellious, punk, lesbian. We love to see it. She's super caring as well, and she wants to make a big difference on the world, which is why it's commonly seen that she's trying to become a healer during school and also becomes one during the war. She is, however, like the big scary dog privilege for Lily and Mary for the most part. She appears to be like super mean on the outside, but deep down she's just a big softie. Also headcanon that she's kind of like all over the place all the time and like high energy constantly. I love her dearly, I really do. Close but serious for like obvious aesthetic reasons. They bond over music and stuff, which is also part of the reason why she and Remus become such good friends. She does join the Order after graduating from Hogwarts during the First War, and unfortunately her and her entire family are completely wiped out during the war. This is something that Sirius talks about in Order of the Phoenix and is canon. And because everyone hates Joy in this fandom, it's honestly often headcanoned that Peter is the one to wipe out her family, including her. So there's that. Commonly, she is fan casted as Sophie Turner, but she is also commonly seen as Florence Pugh. To be moving on to Mary McDonald, who is also in Gryffindor. Mary is also a Muggle-born and comes from a really big family. She has a lot of younger siblings, and she is usually seen as the eldest of all of them. She's considered like the it girl of Gryffindor and very, very passionate about whatever she does, whatever that may be, and also, like Lily and Marlene, will stand up for what she believes in no matter the cost. Also seen as a very flirty character, but this has kind of manifested itself into her being like overly sexualized for no reason whatsoever, and it drives me absolutely insane. Much more to her than just being like a flirt and this outgoing person. Commonly seen as being like incredibly good at dueling. Like, that's just one thing that she's super good at. She can think really fast and on her feet and does really, really well when fighting other people. Also sometimes seen as being on the Quidditch team, and she's like super competitive and says stuff to James like to his face that when he does something absolutely stupid, which is very often. She's very blunt and very, very honest, and she does not care if it hurts your feelings. She will tell you how it is. Also commonly seen that she is one of the very few people of their age group to go against what Dumbledore is saying and question him, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that she gets attacked during her later years in Hogwarts by Evan Rosier, Barty Crouch Jr., and Mulciber, who are all friends with Snape. And it has to do with the fact that she is a Muggle-born, and it's something that's commonly like brushed off in this fandom, but there are a lot of times where people have like talked about her processing that trauma and what that means. So commonly seen that her and Sirius at one point date, so there's a line connecting them. Mary is the only character that is known to survive both wizarding wars, and the reason that she does is because after the first one she obliviates herself and or is obliviated by Dumbledore because she tries to take Harry after Lily and James die. But he won't let her, so he does it for her. It's very commonly fan casted as Sophia Bryant and Alexandra Shipp. Those are the two that pop up most of the time. She is canonically white, but in this fandom, she is considered black. Her and Dorcas are both black fan casted characters. Next up is Dorcas Meadows. Dorcas Meadows is one of the characters in this fandom that kind of goes all over the place. She's seen within the Valkyries. She's also seen within the Slytherin Skittles that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit. She's had a lot of changes over the years, but for the most part, she is seen as a half-blood who doesn't have any other siblings. Other families that she's directly tied to within the Wizarding World families. In addition to her being sorted into Slytherin and Gryffindor, I've also sometimes seen her sorted into Ravenclaw. She's just all over the place. But more often than not, she keeps being seen as sorted into Slytherin and being friends with the Slytherin Skittles, who I'm going to talk about in a second. Very commonly seen that she is really good friends with Pandora, regardless of what house that she's in. Most of the time she is seen as being friends with Pandora. She is very outgoing, very much the fuck around and find out type. You do not want to be on her bad side, essentially. She will screw you up if you try her or anyone else that she cares about. She's very much considered one of the most powerful witches of her age, to the point where later on down the line, during the war, after she joins the Order, Voldemort kills her himself. So, and a lot of that is tied, or thought to be tied, to the level of knowledge she has when it comes to magic and how well she is at wielding her wand. Again, her joining the Order adds a whole nother level of angst, because she's commonly seen as being friends with the Slytherins, so that's fun. Again, angst is like the number one emotion that exists within this fandom. Commonly fan-casted as Savannah Lee Smith and Chandler Kinney. There's also a bunch of other ones that you will see within the fandom. Zoe Kravitz is also another one that she's commonly fan-casted as. So at the start of this fandom, no one really gave a shit about the Slytherin characters. Everyone knew that they were there, but they were labeled as like the bad guys, trademarked. Like they're the bad guys. That's all they are, nothing else more. But there's been like a baby girl renaissance of the Death Eater character, the canon Death Eater characters that exist within this fandom, making them more complex as rather than just like they're evil, which is very similar to the characterization that Draco got in the Harry Potter fandom that we see. It happens to all of the Slytherin characters in this fandom. They all got Dracofied, pretty much. They were given character arcs and more than just being like, oh, they're evil, they're the bad guys, they suck. It's definitely more than that as of late. So we're going to start with the number one baby girlified Slytherin, and that is Regulus Black. Regulus Arcturus Black, aka Reg, aka Reggie, aka RAB, and the now heir of the Black Fortune, because his brother, Sirius, gets disowned. He is the youngest son of Walpurga and Orion Black, younger brother by a year to Sirius. All of the pressure to be the perfect son of the Black family is put on Regulus after Sirius runs away and gets disowned by his family. And this kind of starts after Sirius goes to Hogwarts and is sorted into Gryffindor, and because Regulus is a year younger than him, he goes a whole year without having Sirius by his side, so he kind of feels a little bit betrayed when Sirius comes home and is talking about how great James is. That's a very common headcanon that exists. He feels abandoned, essentially. He's closer to his dad than Sirius is. He talks to his dad in French all the time, because again, he is part of the Black family, so therefore he is fluent in French and also posh and cotillion. He will openly talk to his dad, but not to his mom, because he genuinely fears his mother. That's a very common thing that exists, because she's absolutely terrifying for the most part. He also gets really close with their house elf Creature that you meet later on down the line, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Sirius wasn't home, so he had no one else to talk to or play with, and Creature was there. So he treats Creature like a person rather than a house elf, like most house elves are treated. Regulus comes off as very cold and calculated. He is very much to the book. He does what he needs to do, not what he wants to do. He puts his wants on the back burner and does what he needs to uphold the Black family name. He does have a soft spot for certain people in his life, and he will do whatever he has to protect them. While at school, he does form his own circle of friends, which is what is referred to as the Slytherin Skittles. He is also the seeker on the Slytherin Quidditch team. 90% of the time you will see him as a Quidditch playing dude, and this is also canon. So he's also extremely gifted and very talented, especially in potions. He becomes one of Slughorn's star pupils like Lily is, and he is part of the Slug Club. His 6th year, he takes the Dark Mark to appease his parents, and he then becomes the one true heir of the Black family, because he's doing what he's supposed to. He is very much a parallel to Draco in this sense. He is the Draco Malfoy of this fandom. He is a Death Eater because his parents expect him to be, but that's not truly what he wants to do, but he does it anyway because, you know, that's easier than fighting back. Because of this parallel, it's often headcanon that he is close to Narcissa, which is why Narcissa cares for Draco the way that she does, because she couldn't protect Regulus, which is, again, super sad. None of us are happy here. He knows what he's doing is wrong, and he is not pure evil. Again, the Draco Malfoy parallel. And Regulus is actually the one to discover what Voldemort is trying to do with the Horcruxes, and he is the one to switch out the Slytherin locket for a fake and tries to destroy it. However, he ultimately drowns via Neferi in the cave. There are a lot of drowning jokes in this fandom regarding Regulus Black, so just prepare yourself for that. He also does not go to school his final year because he is too busy being a Death Eater and trying to help Voldemort, but in reality ends up trying to betray him in the end. And him finding the locket and everything, that's all canon. The reason behind it, though, is mostly headcanons. Regulus dies without Sirius knowing that he actually went against Voldemort and trying to do what he did, and Sirius dies not knowing that either, so that's always a fun layer of sadness that this fandom likes to bring up constantly, because why wouldn't you? This, in my opinion, is probably one of the most developed and complex characters that existed from nothing. There are so many layers to his character, like literally I think he's mentioned a total of like 6 times in his entirety in the books, but like has so much lore attached to him in this fandom. A whole association with him in Black Cats. There's like a fun headcanon that he also figures out how to be an animagus, and his animagus would be a black cat and Sirius is a black dog. Hi, I'm in the middle of editing and I forgot to mention one of the most important headcanons that exists within this fandom regarding Regulus's character. By the time I was recording this part of the video, I had been filming for an hour straight, so I was kind of getting all over the place. One of the biggest headcanons that exists within this fandom is that Regulus is commonly headcanoned as being trans. This plays into the whole black family aspect and him being the heir to the black fortune, his relationship with Sirius when they're younger, and why Sirius protects him so much, why his mom is so awful and terrible. This was another way to add a level of diversity to these characters within this fandom and to go directly against J.K. Rowling's transphobia and just her being a terrible, terrible person. I love the Regulus trans headcanon. I think it's so fitting and it's very, very lovely to read in fics. I just felt so bad that I forgot to mention it while I was doing this part of the video, while I was actually sitting at my board and talking about it. It was written in my script. I was just jumping around so much that I completely forgot to even mention it. So I just wanted to throw this in there to be like, hey, by the way, didn't forget. When I was asking people in the fandom like what they think is important to include headcanon wise for knowledge of entering this fandom, this was the number one thing that was brought up. I wanted to make sure to include that because trans representation matters regardless of whether it's a fan theory or it's an actual character that is seen as trans. Back to me from the past. This, for the most part, has only ever been fan casted as Timothée Chalamet. I only just now recently have seen any other fan casts for him. A lot of the time, I can never tell if I'm looking at a Timothée Chalamet edit or a Regulus Black edit until I check the tags. That's the only way to like tell the difference between the two. We are moving on to Barty Crouch Jr. His full name is also Bartholomew. I need you all to know that. Barty is a pureblood. He is a Nepo baby. The Black brothers are also Nepo babies. Okay, moving on. Barty is a pureblood and the only son to Barty Crouch, which is why he is Barty Crouch Jr. You see Barty Crouch, he works for the Ministry. His dad is well respected in the Ministry of Magic, which is then pushed, again, these like expectations for Barty to be a certain way are pushed upon him pretty early in his life. Barty hates being compared to his dad and all of these expectations, which then creates this very complex relationship that the two of them have. Commonly seen as the same year as Regulus and is canonically actually sorted in as a Ravenclaw. That is apparently on the Pottermore website. Didn't know that, but that is completely ignored, and he is almost always seen as a Slytherin. His age is never confirmed, so just based off of pure speculation, the fandom said he's the same age as Regulus, and everyone went, okay. Adds more to the angst of him being a Slytherin rather than a Ravenclaw because OMG, he has daddy issues. Did I not mention that? This man is just daddy issues personified. He's seen as very, very sarcastic with a lot of dark humor, to the point where it's like borderline concerning, and seen as very unapproachable and kind of just like a dick in general. But he has his moments with the people that he cares about, obviously, like most people do. But in reality, he's just a dumbass with trauma. He's also usually seen as like super impulsive, but he is incredibly smart. He just has these impulses to do things that he shouldn't do. Not always with the best intentions behind his actions for the most part. He stays in Hogwarts all 7 years, even though, again, he doesn't want to. He wants to leave just like Regulus did and join the Death Eaters, and he eventually does join the Death Eaters after he finishes school and does take the Dark Mark. He does work out of the Ministry after school because of his dad, and like I said, he hides the fact that he is a Death Eater from his father. It isn't revealed until much later after the war that he was a Death Eater and partook in the torture of Frank and Alice Longbottom, and then he is arrested and sent to Azkaban, which then further complicates the relationship he has with his dad. He gets caught again during Goblet of Fire. He does eventually go back to Azkaban and dies via Dementor's kiss. The only person he canonically kills, though, is his own father, and that is in the Goblet of Fire. He is commonly fan-casted as Maxime Danat Fouval, who is a French actor from Scum, and he's also seen as Richard Harmon, who is my personal favorite, but not who I put on this board because you honestly see Maxine the most. Also young David Tennant, since David Tennant played Barty Crouch Jr. in Goblet of Fire. Moving on to Evan Rosier, who is another member of the Slytherin Skittles. He is pureblood. His family is part of the Sacred 28 alongside Regulus and Barty. He is seen as the same year as Regulus and is also sorted into Slytherin. A lot of the time he is seen headcanoned to be the twin brother of Pandora, but I'm kind of going to talk about that when I talk about Pandora next. Other than Pandora, he doesn't have any known siblings. Evan is very much seen as like the goofball of the Slytherin Skittles, kind of like a Richard Tozier character archetype. Ambitious to a stupid degree. Very sly, very sneaky, very like can get away with a lot of stuff. So many times that he is like in every fic that you will see that he is yelled at by Barty and Regulus to shut up. So he's a yapper like me. Also sometimes seen as a Quidditch player. It really just depends. Sometimes seen as a beater alongside Barty on the Quidditch team. For Hogwarts, he also joins the Death Eaters and takes the Dark Mark later on in his teens, and canonically he is murdered by Mad-Eye Moody. Strives to be on the front lines of battles for the Death Eaters. He's very much like an adrenaline junkie and comes close to death many times, eventually then being killed by Mad-Eye Moody, and it's often headcanon that Evan throws a curse at Mad-Eye, causing him to lose his eye. Evan also has so many fan casts. When I was doing research for this, there was like 6 different ones that were pretty common. He's commonly seen as Castor von Bulow, who I put down here. Also, I think another French actor. But also first seen as Evan Peters, as well as Dominic Fike is also another one that he pops up as a lot. Moving on to Pandora, aka Pandora Lovegood, also aka Pandora Rosier, also sometimes known as Pandora Lestrange. Pandora's maiden name is canonically not known. We just know that it eventually becomes Lovegood because she marries Xenophilus, who is not on this board, but is the father of Luna Lovegood, and Pandora is the mother of Luna Lovegood. She's seen as both pureblood and also half-blood. Again, it just really depends on whatever headcanon last name she has. But for the most part, she's commonly seen as Evan's twin sister. Again, more angst, just for angst purposes. That's the only reason why. But also sometimes seen as part of the Lestrange family, which would make her a cousin of Regulus after Bellatrix marries Rodolphus Lestrange, which would make sense as to why she is such good friends with Regulus. Even if she's the twin sister of Evan, her and Evan and Regulus are all very good friends because all the pureblood families know each other very well, especially the ones that are wizard Nazis, so they grow up together. She's a very curious mind. Pandora is also commonly seen as being sorted into Ravenclaw and or Slytherin. The Slytherin part comes from her being Evan's twin sister. The Ravenclaw part comes from her being Luna's mom. She tends to be on the brighter side. She's a very bubbly person. She is kind of like a sunshine rainbows girly, but also she's very, very curious. She likes to figure out why magic works the way that it was and likes to test its limits. She wears her heart on her sleeve and has a lot of care and love that she gives, mainly to Evan and also Regulus, which is why she loves them so very, very much. Also sometimes headcanoned to be a seer. I personally don't like very much because there is canonically a seer within this universe, and being a seer is not something that's super common within the wizarding world, but then again, also fuck J.K. Rowling, so we roll with the punches and do what we want. That being said, I'm not saying that you can't like that headcanon. If you do, that's totally fine. To me, it makes sense as to why she would be one because of how quirky she is. It also doesn't make sense to me because Sybil Trelawney exists within the Marauders era, and I'm gonna get to her in a second. I think it's a fun headcanon to add another layer to her character. I'm not here to hate on the things that you like, okay? So commonly seen that Pandora is the one to help Regulus figure out the Horcruxes, and that's part of the reason why she dies. Canonically, it is said by Luna that she watches her mother die because she was experimenting with a spell and it blows up in her face and kills her, and a lot of people like to headcanon that maybe it was the Horcrux that she was trying to destroy, or like trying to come up with a spell to destroy the Horcrux and couldn't, and that's eventually what killed her, which breaks my heart because that just means that she is trying to finish the work that Regulus started, and she lost her best friend and is just trying to get avenge him in a way. And Pandora Lovegood is commonly fan casted as Elle Fanning. There are not many others. A lot of the times the Rosier twins are seen as being mixed race. There aren't any specific actors I could find that are fan casted as them in that diverse way. But Elle Fanning is probably one of the most common ones. The next section of characters I'm going to be talking about are kind of like miscellaneous characters. They don't have a specific subgroup that they have a name for, but they are very important and pop up in this fandom quite a bit. I'm also not going to give a super in-depth mention of description of all of the adult characters that exist within the Marauders fandom, because for the most part you learn about those characters a lot during Harry's time, but they do pop up a lot in this fandom, and those adults usually are Voldemort, obviously, Dumbledore, Mad-Eye Moody, McGonagall, and Poppy Pomfrey. I'm going to give you just a brief explanation as to why the value that these characters hold within this fandom. Starting off with Dumbledore. Dumbledore fucking sucks, and this entire fandom hates him. Because to this fandom, all he does is just use children, regardless of whether the fact that they join the order of their own free will or not. He uses child soldiers to fight his battles against the big bad, instead of just, trying to recruit a bunch of older adult wizards, which he does, but he still uses children for his own benefit. Doesn't bat a single eye when anything happens to them. He's kind of just well, that's what they signed up for and I can't do anything about it. He uses people for his own agenda, which is kind of the same thing that Voldemort does. It's just different because he's considered the good guy and doesn't hate Muggleborns outright, I guess. That is mainly the consensus that the fandom has on Dumbledore, is that we hate him. McGonagall and Pomfrey are both mother, and they are lesbians and in love, and they will do whatever they can to protect their Gryffindor children. That is kind of pretty much their entire character within this fandom. We have Alistair Moody, aka Mad-Eye Moody, who is honestly fucking terrifying in a very intimidating way. He is the second in command to the order to Dumbledore and is pretty much in charge of dispatching them to missions and stuff. He does, however, kind of have a soft spot for these kids and doesn't want to send them into danger, but knows that's what they kind of have to do, and he hates it. Even though he won't outwardly show that he cares about them, he does deep down. And of course you have Tom Riddle, or also, more known as Voldemort. And it's often headcanon that he does not look like the lizard version of himself that he does in the original. He actually is pretty attractive and more Tom Riddle-esque, because he's still technically human. What makes him less human is him creating the Horcruxes, which then morphs him into this version of himself that you see later on with no nose. He is conventionally attractive, which is why he's able to garner the support that he is. His attractiveness is just a manipulation tactic to get you to join him. But also he uses fear as his main tactic of trying to get people to join his cause. Okay, now moving on to these miscellaneous characters, because I've been yapping for so long, dude. We're starting off with one of the main miscellaneous characters that doesn't have a specific place in like a specific subgroup in this fandom, but is very, very important, even though my opinions on him that I hate him and despise him greatly, and that is Severus Snape. Severus Snape, aka Snivelus, is what the Marauders tend to refer him as, and he is another one of the most hated characters in this fandom other than Dumbledore and Voldemort. I'm a Snape hater through and through. I did not like his character during the Golden Trio era. I don't like his character in the Marauders era. I think he is like a snot ball of a human. I also think that his redemption arc makes no fucking sense, and that what J.K. Racist was trying to do was not successful in the way that she was trying to do it, because it could have been done a lot better. I understood what she was trying to do, but she did it poorly. He is canonically a half-blood. His dad is a wizard, his mom is a muggle, or vice versa. It really just depends. I don't know if that's ever like confirmed in canon. I will put something up here if that is true, and I find out later when I'm editing. He later down the line names himself the Half-Blood Prince, because that is what normal people do. They give themselves a nickname. That was really mean, but also I don't care, because I don't like him. And he's not real. He's childhood best friends with Lily, and they bond over both being considered freaks of nature. He has a very shitty relationship with his dad, for the most part. Again, also has daddy issues, but became the worst version of someone who has daddy issues. Always really, really good at potions from the beginning. He's a genius when it comes to potion making, and he's a snob about it. He lets it get to his head. It is very much his ego. He gets sorted into Slytherin and then starts getting indoctrinated with the whole like blood purity mindset from the other Slytherins that are within his house, even though he himself is a half-blood. He's commonly seen as being friends with Mulciber, Wilkes, and Avery, who are mentioned as Death Eaters later on down the line. In order for him to be accepted by them, because he himself is a half-blood, he has to stoop down to their level and hate Muggleborns just like they do, because that is what makes the most sense. He hates the Marauders, but the Marauders bully, for the most part in this fandom, they bully these Slytherins that are bullying other students because of their blood status, so like it's considered warranted for the most part. Yeah. The Marauders tend to target him specifically, and he gets bullied by them and then becomes the worst version of himself as someone who gets bullied. Like there's like that saying of people who are bullied become one of two things. One, you become a better version of yourself and care about people and their feelings, or two, you become a terrible person because you were bullied as a child, and Snape becomes that version of himself. Also completely obsessed with Lily Evans. Lily is his childhood crush, and he does not ever hide that fact, but he treats her like garbage because he's friends with garbage people and they're indoctrinating him in their garbage mindset. What he has for her is not love. It maybe was once love, but then turns into an unhealthy obsession and becomes just scary, in my opinion. If he truly did love and care about her and saw her become happy and start a family and find love, he would have been happy for her, but instead he becomes bitter and thinks that the world is completely against him, which like says a lot about him and his character. Just weird. Like, imagine being so obsessed with your childhood crush so much that you become a bitter human being. That's just strange, bro. Is saved by James from werewolf version of Lupin in his 5th year, but I'm going to talk about that more in the timeline portion of this video. He's super rude and super snobby and very, very stuck up, and honestly, the only one who isn't mean to Lily at first, but then that changes later on down the line. Is a double agent during the war for both the Order and the Death Eaters, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's obsessed with Lily. Then finds out that Voldemort is going to try and kill Lily, so he's like, oh my god, I gotta do the right thing. And then I don't like his character at all. Also the one to tell Dumbledore that Voldemort is planning on killing Lily and James to get to Harry. So I guess, I don't know, there's some redemption there, but not enough for me to justify why Harry named his child Albus Severus Potter. Anyway, he's commonly fan-casted as Lewis Carroll, and there's also a few other ones. One of them I think is an actor from Game of Thrones. Can't remember his name. But there are a few different ones, but the most common one that I see that is named and stated is Lewis Carroll, which is why he's on this board. The next one is Alice Fortescue. I don't really know how to pronounce her last name. She's a half-blood, and she's commonly seen as 2 years older than the Marauders. She is the mother of Neville Longbottom. She joins the Order and eventually becomes an Auror, and she ends up marrying Frank Longbottom. She is a sweetheart, and I love her character so much. I wish people bring her up a little bit more. She's kind of underrated within the fandom. She is eventually tortured to insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange and Barty Crouch Jr. after the fall of Voldemort, because Neville is part of the prophecy. Alice's family also owns the ice cream shop that is in Diagon Alley. That is like canon, but it's like very ever rarely mentioned. I just wanted to throw that in here because someone pointed that out to me, and I haven't stopped thinking about it ever, actually, because I think it's really cute. And it's also commonly seen that she plays Quidditch while she's at school, which is what brings her and Frank together. And she is commonly fan casted as Carrie Mulligan and deserves more attention than she receives. And next we're moving on to Frank Longbottom. Frank is comes from a pureblood family that is considered one of the Sacred 28, and he is also commonly seen as like 2 years older than the Marauders. The legend of a Quidditch player gets headcanoned to get offered to play Quidditch coming out of Hogwarts, but declines to become an Auror because he wants to do the right thing for the sake of the war. Is commonly seen as like this hero to James, and why James loves Quidditch so much is because of Frank. Also tortured to insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange, and spends the rest of his life in St. Mungo's. He is also one of the original members of the Order and becomes an Auror working directly with Mad-Eye Moody. Commonly fancasted is Jim Sturgis from one specific film that he did in 2011. Like those scenes specifically. Speaking of Bellatrix Lestrange, Bellatrix Black, aka Bellatrix Lestrange, aka Bella, aka Voldemort's #1 fan. She adores that guy. Bellatrix is a part of the Black family. She is a pureblood, cousin to Sirius and Regulus, and the middle sister of Andromeda and Narcissa Black. She's 5 or 6 years older than the Marauders. She's much older than them and graduates a lot sooner than they do, and almost immediately after graduating from Hogwarts marries Rodolphus Lestrange, which makes her then Bellatrix Lestrange, and she does it because she is trying to keep her blood purity and all of that stuff, because the Lestranges are also part of the Sacred 28. Known to be a very skilled witch, like she's very, very good at magic and dueling and stuff, and becomes absolutely obsessed with Voldemort when he starts to rise to power. She's like his #1 stan. She is one of his more trusted followers, so commonly seen as having something a little bit off about her. She's a little crazy, a little insane, a little unstable, one might say. She needs to do, even if that means hurting other people, and she doesn't care. She has the dog in her and it will bite you. She lacks empathy for the most part, is what her common headcanon is that she's not a very empathetic human, like at all. She commits various crimes during the First War and also the Second, one of the main ones being the torture of Frank and Alice Longbottom, and that is part of what sends her to Azkaban when the war ends. Commonly fancasted as Kate McGrath, but like specifically Morgana's evil from Merlin, that's Bellatrix Lestrange, young Bella. To the younger of the Black sisters, which is Narcissa Black, also known as Narcissa Malfoy. Like middle nice to Regulus and Sirius, but she's closer with Regulus. Her and Sirius kind of get along, but not as close as she and Regulus are. They are both the youngest of their family's siblings. While at school, she kind of like creates this whole legacy for herself. She's very, very smart. She's very, very ambitious, and she knows what she wants, and she will get it done. She has a certain standard that she sets for herself, to the point where like she doesn't really need to prove herself to anyone. Also commonly puts the Black name above everything else. She is that girl. She and Regulus are kind of the same, of like she does what is expected of her, and she ends up marrying Lucius Malfoy after graduating Hogwarts, and thus later on giving birth to Draco Malfoy. I do like to think that there was a little bit of love in their marriage, but also not at the same time. Extremely calculated. She has a method to her madness. There's a reason behind every move that she makes, and she will not tell you why. She just does those things. She also is canonically the only one within the Death Eaters that doesn't have to take the Dark Mark. There's never really an explanation as to why, but the fandom likes to headcanon that is because of her reputation, because she proved her loyalty time and time again. It is commonly fancasted as Sarah Good. There's a few other variations of her fancasts, but I could not find their names for the life of me, for whatever reason. Moving on to the eldest of the Black sisters, and that is Andromeda Black, also known as Andromeda Tonks, also known as Andy. The eldest sister to Bellatrix and Narcissa Black, and she is also an outcast. She is disowned by the Black family because she decides to marry a Muggle-born, also known as Teddy Tonks. Purely disowned for wizard racist reasons. And that growing up, she was always very, very close with Sirius, and they get even closer after Sirius is disowned by his family for obvious reasons. Outcast sees outcast, that type of thing. In the Order with Teddy, but she's not on the front lines as much because during this time she is raising a toddler Nephedora Tonks. So that is why she's not out and about doing things. She's a huge rebel. She is the rebel type. She loves Muggle music. She loves Muggle culture. It's kind of part of the reason why she is brought towards Teddy. She was very outspoken, even though she was considered a Slytherin during her time, and she is commonly fan-casted as Keira Knightley. Moving on to Lucius Malfoy, aka Voldemort's bitch boy. This is the same year as Bellatrix, so he leaves Hogwarts pretty early on into the Marauders being there. Also the first and only son of the Malfoys, so he is the heir to the Malfoy name, hence why he marries Narcissa. The Malfoys are also considered one of those higher pureblood families, so he has a very big reputation to uphold. Commonly seen as a very, very cold person, he becomes Voldemort's right-hand man. He's also very reserved for the most part, which is part of the reason why Voldemort ends up trusting him to the degree that he does. He's a coward though, like through and through a coward. For the fall of Voldemort, both times this man is trying to claim that it was the Imperius curse and he didn't actually mean what he was doing because he got caught. Voldemort brings this up in Goblet of Fire, actually, because Lucius doesn't actively try to revive Voldemort. He just kind of tries to ignore the fact that he did all the terrible things that he did and move on, and that doesn't work because he just becomes a Death Eater anyway. Younger Lucius is commonly fan-casted as Harry Lloyd, but also seen as the Witcher version of Henry Cavill, which I don't agree with whatsoever. I like Henry Lloyd better. I think it's more fitting for him. Next, we are moving on to Sybil Trelawney, who I absolutely adore. Sybil does not get enough love and attention in this fandom. She's often not seen as a Marauder era character when she very much is, and she has a hand in a lot of the canon plot. It's important because she is the one who has the prophecy about Harry in the first place. Commonly seen as being the same age or a year younger and or older than the Marauders. It really just depends on what you're looking at, but her age is never confirmed. She is a seer, which is a different part of magic where she can recite prophecies against her will. She has no control over it, but doesn't know what they will be or when they will be said. She just can recite them. She's also very tapped into divination, which is another branch of magic. Like I said earlier with Pandora, the whole thing of both her and Pandora being seers doesn't make sense to me because being a seer is a very, very rare form of magic, and they're kind of not taken seriously within the wizarding world, even though there is a whole department of the ministry that is focused entirely on prophecies. They're still not considered these serious beings. They're often seen as hacks or people who just make stuff up for fun, which you see reflected in Hermione during Prisoner of Azkaban. She is a Ravenclaw, and she's kind of seen as an outcast of the school, as the weird kid. She's very whimsical because she is different and has these prophecies and can control it, so she's kind of an outcast for the most part. My favorite headcanon is that her and Lily are very, very good friends, as well as her and Pandora being very, very good friends. I think it's just really cute. But she kind of fades into the background at Hogwarts, and she does even during the Second War as well. She's not very confrontational. Also seen that she's very, very close with Peter as well as Lily and Pandora. She does join the Order, but it's mainly for Dumbledore's benefit. She is the one to recite the prophecy in 1980 about Harry being born and being the one to defeat Voldemort in the end. And she has this prophecy in the presence of Dumbledore and also sometimes Peter. Very often she is fan-casted as Juno Temple, who I think fits her vibe so well. I love her so very much. She's one of my favorite Harry Potter characters and always has been. I just wish she got a lot more recognition that she deserves within this fandom because she's not often regarded as a Marauders era character when she very much is. She's the one who has the prophecy. She's super important to this entire fandom. The last character that I'm going to talk about is not a canon character in this fandom at all. He entirely exists from All the Young Dudes, which is a very popular fan fiction in this fandom, and that is Grant Chapman. Grant Chapman is a muggle that becomes friends with Remus in his younger years while Remus is at the all-boys home. Again, this is only complicit to All the Young Dudes. But because All the Young Dudes is such a popular fan fiction, Grant is considered a canon character in the fandom because he's just been around for so long. The two of them get into a relationship at some point while Remus is having a breakdown after the war and neglects the wizarding world. We will see him a lot and pop up a lot within this fandom, but he is not a canon character. He was completely an original character written in one of the most popular fanfics, and now is regarded as a canon character, but he isn't. So don't get too confused when you are just joining this fandom. Okay, so now that you know all of these characters, and I just vomited a bunch of information at you, we also have ships to talk about. When this fandom started, it was very heteronormative. There were very much straight characters. They did not have any other relationship outside of what was canon. To the point where, like, Mary and Remus and Marlene and Sirius were shipped together, which, like, oh my god, weird time to be part of the fandom. But specifically because of that, because of Jilly. But plot twist, they're all gay. Everyone gets shipped with everyone almost, and this has a lot to do with more queer representation within the fandom. That's part of the reason why all of these ships exist and why they are there. I'm not going to be covering every single one, because when I tell you that everyone gets shipped with everyone, I absolutely mean it. I really do. I'm not going to hit every single one. I'm just going to be talking about the more popular ones that pop up. So we're going to start with the biggest ship that I think is within this fandom, and that is Wolfstar, and that is the ship between Sirius Black and Remus Lupin. This is not canon within the Harry Potter universe. However, at this point, it basically is. Don't bring Tonks into this at all, okay? I don't want to hear it. The fact that Wolfstar is canon is also fueled by the fact that David Lewis said that he was playing Remus as gay this entire time until he got the script for 6th movie and Tonks and Remus are together. Like, he was genuinely shocked because he thought Remus was gay, and that's how he was playing Remus this entire time, which it translates in Prisoner of Azkaban if you've watched that movie at all. They're very much strangers to friends to lovers to strangers again. That wonderful, wonderful song. Angsty and slow burn, and it is a fun time, let me tell you. It's so slow burn that a lot of the time they don't end up getting together until 6th or 7th year, because there's the whole betrayal that happens in 5th year, and also Sirius realizing he likes men and all of that fun jazz. Every time Remus is the one to fall first, but Sirius falls harder. That's genuinely the headcanon between the two of them. You have the angst of the prank, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and also just the war. They both think that the other person is the spy, but then they reunite after Sirius breaks out of jail, and then they lie low at Lupin's. That is canon, by the way. The lie low at Lupin's is a canon sentence from Harry Potter. Remus watches Sirius die anyway, and I don't want to think about it too much because it makes me sad. Probably the top ship in this fandom. There are so many fics that are fantastic, like phenomenal fan fictions for them. They have the most of tension in this fandom, even though it makes no sense, because this fandom would not exist with the next ship that I'm going to talk about, and that is Jilly. Now, to me, this is the most important ship, but also the second popular ship to me. That is my opinion. This entire fandom would not exist without Lily and James Potter, because without them, Harry wouldn't be a thing. So, they are the blueprint, and I will defend them forever and always. I am always a Jilly defender, okay? I will die on that hill. Jilly is also James Potter and Lily Evans, by the way. Don't know if I said that. Like, enemies, quote unquote. Like, she just can't stand him for the longest time. They're not really enemies or rivals. She just thinks he's ignorant and annoying for majority of their time at Hogwarts, which honestly makes sense. She realizes she has feelings for him and kind of freaks out about it because she's like, oh my god, what the hell, bro? My favorite headcanon, though, is that she thought that James was kidding when he asks her out repeatedly and thought it was a joke, and then realizes that he was being serious. I think it's just so funny. It's hilarious to me. They do eventually get together, usually around their 7th year, and then they get married and have Harry and then die protecting each other. Ain't that something? Their story really does get cut short. They would have been such a perfect little family, okay? And Voldemort screwed it all up. But that leads me to the next ship. That is Jegulus. This ship started off as a joke within the fandom because there was this thing called Jegulus Week, and it was kind of like trying to figure out like a crack ship within the fandom that wouldn't make any sense, because this ship does not make sense. Logically, canonically, Regulus and James would have never really interacted, and also in all early fan fictions, James absolutely despises Regulus, but with the Jegulus Week, it just kicked off. The Marauders fandom is not anything but persistent. Because of Jegulus Week, this ended up like sticking around and people ran with it. Because, oh my god, gay ship. Enemies are friends to lovers, with also the my best friend's brother trope thrown in there, with also secret lovers also sprinkled in there as well. Forbidden love type beat. That trope is like a level 1000 because if Sirius finds out, he like freaks out every single time. Sirius does find out about Jegulus. It's a lot of Sirius yelling and James running away. That's always a fun little headcanon to throw in there. Interesting little detail is that Remus ends up finding out about Jegulus before Sirius does, so that ends another like level of tension to their relationship, because again, we can't be happy here. That's just not a rule. I don't know how many times I've said that this video alone. The whole trope of like James believes that he can save Regulus from being a Death Eater and his family like he did with Sirius, and that's a whole other layer to this, but again, Regulus does what he is supposed to do and becomes the version of himself that his parents want, which means getting the Dark Mark and becoming a Death Eater, and that is ultimately the demise of their relationship. If you're looking at canon compliant, it's always very, very sad. There are a lot of non-canon compliant fics where they do get to be happy for the most part. Jegulus is usually taking place before Jilly, and it's usually like connected somehow that way. I think that was enough. Oftentimes, Regulus, James, and Lily are commonly shipped together as a throuple for Jegulily. That is their name. It is a fucking weird word. Mainly following the headcanon that James is poly, which pops up quite a bit, which is why Jegulily exists. I don't ship it, but there are like cute fan arts I've seen of them and that they're a cute little unit, but also the relationship between Regulus and Lily makes no sense to me whatsoever, so there's also that. But if you like what you like, I'm not gonna judge you for it. You do what you want to do, boo. I felt the need to mention this because when I first heard about it, I was completely blindsided when I was entering this fandom, and I was like, they what? What are you talking about? Cute. Sometimes I just don't ship it. That's just, it's not my thing. And that's totally okay. Being on the Regulus train though, Bartolus is a thing that happens as well within this fandom, and that is the ship between Regulus and Barty Crouch Jr. Very temporary ship. It's kind of just like one of those things where like the relationship was very fast to burn out. Very rarely end up as endgame. Like a background ship that ends up leading to Jegulus, which ends up leading to also Rose Killer, which also ends up leading to Jilly. It's like one of those like catalyst ships. It burns fast and bright, but it never lasts. So their like relationship was like incredibly dysfunctional always, and they realized that they're better off as friends. Bartolus always ends up leading to the next ship that we're going to talk about, which is Rose Killer, which is the ship between Barty Crouch Jr. and Evan Brosier. This is very much friends to lovers, as well, textbook friends to lovers, but they're both idiots and don't realize that they like each other for the longest time. Regulus is actually their number one shipper 90% of the time. But they complement and understand each other to a degree that no one else does. They see versions of themselves to each other that no one else will see. They complement each other. They're both fucking crazy and both Death Eaters. Oh my god, what if the two evil killer people are gay and in love? That's the basis of this ship. Barty is usually overly protective of Evan, which is why there's the headcanon that once Evan is killed by Moody, Barty kind of goes absolutely insane and loses his mind, hence then motivating him to go torture the Longbottoms. There's a whole like level to it that I don't think I can like fully express without you having to go deep diving into like Rose Killer fan fictions. The fact that Barty is then takes over the identity of the man who killed the person that he loved most in the world is just utterly depressing. It's so sad. I'm also going to mention another crack ship that has popped up so many times, again, started as a joke, and that is Party Van. There's another throuple ship between Barty Crouch Jr., Evan Rosier, and Peter Pettigrew. This ship is a complete joke, but again, people in the fandom run with it and actually make stuff that is really good, because everyone in this fandom is so incredibly talented that you can take a crack ship like this and have something actually look really great, which is insane to me. But this ship started as a joke by one creator named Salem, who is a TikToker in the Marauders community that came up with this ship and acted like it was real and it was just this huge prank and confused the hell out of everyone. But then again, the fandom took it and then ran with it, and I've seen Party Van against my will. I just think it's funny. It's a silly little haha that exists within this fandom, but I felt the need to bring it up because, again, when I learned about it, completely blindsided. The next ship that we're going to talk about, though, has a lot of parallels to Rose Killer, and that is Dorleen, and that is the ship between Dorcas Meadows and Marlene McKinnon. Regardless of what house Dorcas is in, her and Marlene end up getting together during school. It's part of Marlene's like journey of realizing she's a lesbian, and a lot of that headcanon has to do with the fact that like she realizes she's a lesbian because she wasn't in love with James Potter like everyone else was, which I think is incredibly funny, and also gives into the fact that like she grew up with him and be like, no, ew, he's disgusting, and he's a boy. They're also friends to lovers, slow burn, and they end up getting together around 6th or 7th year and stay together throughout the war, ultimately until Marlene's death, which, like I mentioned, the reason why Voldemort kills Dorcas personally is because her grief is making her so powerful magic-wise, because she's so angry and mad that Marlene is killed that he takes her out personally. Another sad parallel between Evan and Barty, because again, no happiness here. The gayness continues because you also have Panda Lily, which is the ship between Pandora and Lily. Usually this is seen as friends to lovers, but also this ship exists usually when Jegulus is happening, because like if Jilly isn't happening but Jegulus is happening, Lily has to be shipped with someone, which then means that Lily is gay and gets together with either Pandora or Mary, which leads me to the next ship, which is Mar-Lily, which again is the ship between Lily and Mary McDonald, because if there's a gay ship happening one place, there's another gay ship happening somewhere else. Pandora and Lily is a cute little fluffy ship. I adore it. I think the fan art is so cute. The ship between Mary and Lily, though, I think is very cute as well, because they're both Muggle-borns and they understand each other to a very specific degree that no one else would, due to the fact that they both come from Muggle families. More of a like friends to lovers beat as well. I personally though ship Panda Lily over Mar-Lily, because I just think Lily and Mary's friendship is too pure for it to be a romantic thing, but to each their own. You can ship whatever you want. I will not judge you unless you ship this, because that is a thing that I've seen and I need you to get out. The last ship that I want to talk about is Pebble, which is the ship between Sybil Trelawney and Peter Pettigrew, and this I think is another underrated ship that not enough people talk about, but I think is really cute and also tragic. Them are outcasts, or considered outcasts within the fandom, and I just think it's adorable that they get together because they see each other. I think that that's just precious. I think that nobody notices them, but they notice each other, and I just think that's so pure. But also it's incredibly heartbreaking because Peter is the spy that tells Voldemort the prophecy that Sybil has against her will, and is ultimately the reason why Lily and James die, and Sybil is friends with Lily and James, and he betrays his friends, and she doesn't know anything until it's too late. Even if she tried to tell anybody, no one would believe her because she's considered a freak. I love this fandom so very much. We're all depressed constantly all the time. And that is all of the ships. Also, this board is now done. You now understand the method behind this madness, and also how insane this fandom is, and the sun went down. That's how long I've been recording. Now back to me in my other location. If you thought I was done yapping, you are totally incorrect. I am so sorry. I'm now going to be talking about the timeline that exists within this fandom now that you know everything about these characters and the ships. I know I talk way too much. I'm so sorry. I really wanted this video to be super extensive, and it is. So, really just like a reflection of who I am as a person right now. This is going to be a combination of things that are considered fanon and also canon that are universally agreed upon within this fandom. Now, there are a few fan fictions that are super popular within this fandom that kind of contribute to the reason why the timeline is considered what it is, and that is All the Young Dudes, written by Miss King Bean, who is Taylor Swift. That's a whole nother separate video and theory that I could go into because it's kind of insanely silly. All the Young Dudes is a fanfiction that was written back in 2018, and I think it was finished being written in 2020, 2021, around the pandemic, I think is when it was finally completed. But it is a 500,000 word fan fiction that kind of became the baseline of this fandom after it became super popular. It is following the point of view of Remus, and so you're seeing his character build into what it is, and which shifted a lot of the characterization that existed within the fandom, especially around him, but also James, Sirius, and Peter, and all of the other minor characters that exist within this fandom. But it was like written by an adult instead of like, you know, a 16-year-old who did research into this time period, as well as is familiar with the culture of being born and raised in the UK. There is a lot of valid criticism of this fic because of how well researched it is, but for the most part, this fic is pretty much held to a very high standard within the fandom. It's kind of the stepping stone into Marauders lore. If you are starting to like get into it, it's the one thing that people highly recommend you read first. The Young Dudes is also part of the reason why David Bowie and T-Rex has become such a staple music choice within this fandom. Miss King Bean uses lyrics from David Bowie and T-Rex throughout this entire fic, so that is part of the reason why that has become such a big symbol within the fandom. The second fanfiction that is kind of one of the bigger ones that is also held to a very high standard is Choices by Mrs. Moon. It's a Jegulus canon compliant fic that was written after All the Young Dudes. A lot that is written in that fic that All the Young Dudes does not cover because it switches POVs between all of the characters. So instead of just following Remus's perspective, you're following pretty much almost every character's perspective that exists, the like main people that exist within this fandom. So you're seeing events like Mary being attacked and Regulus dealing with all of the stuff with becoming a Death Eater, and James and Sirius and Remus and all of that. So that also helps play into the order in which the timeline happens, because that is also considered canon. Because yes, it is a Jegulus fic, but Jilly does happen in the end. I'm going to do my best to kind of condense this timeline as much as possible. I have read both of these, so I'm based a lot of my timeline on those two things plus other things that I have researched and know previously from both canon and also being in this fandom for as long as I have. Events that are not in the same order as the canon timeline that you would be able to find on fandom.com. This is, for the most part, the overall fanon timeline and the order in which things usually happen within this fandom, and that has been agreed on. I'm doing my best, okay? I am one person. 1971. This is the first year of Hogwarts for the Marauders. All four of the Marauders, James, Sirius, Peter, and Remus, meet on the train for the very first time on their way to Hogwarts. They are then all sorted into Gryffindor and become dormmates. Remus is kind of on the outside of them because in most of the time, James and Peter are kind of like a package deal. They're childhood friends. James and Sirius become instant besties, and Remus is there, but he's kind of on the outside for the most part for their first year. He usually does not want anything to do with them. Start the reign of terror of pranks because they're trying to live up some of the other pranksters, the Perrowit twins that exist within the Hogwarts school already. This is usually around the time where like Remus starts like exploring the castle and writing things down about how to get everywhere because they're 11 and get lost in a giant magical castle. It's usually around the end of the first year that they come up with the name the Marauders. They coin this as their little group because it's usually headcanon that McGonagall is the one to give them the name, and they overhear it and they're like, a Marauder? That's us. That's crazy. We're 11. Nicknames, however, have not been picked out yet. So the Moony, Padfoot, Wormtail, Prongs thing does not exist. They still call each other by their normal names, like normal people. Into 1972, this is the second year of Hogwarts for the Marauders, and also Regulus and the Slytherin Skittles, their first year at Hogwarts. Marauders are introduced to Regulus through Sirius, but Regulus kind of already hates them because Sirius has changed. So that doesn't really go well 90% of the time. Regulus cannot stand them. They're, again, reigning terror on the school, especially the Slytherin house, and they're 12. So this is still getting sick every full moon, but James and Sirius are kind of catching on as to what's happening because they're incredibly smart and not stupid, and they live in the same room as him, and the fact that he's going missing every full moon is not a coincidence. They eventually approach Remus about it within their second year 90% of the time, so it's around that time that Remus comes clean and tells them that he is a werewolf. But then after that, now that they know, he feels comfortable letting them come and visit him in the hospital wing after every full moon. Around the time that the Marauders become better friends with the girlies, so Lily, Mary, Marlene, and sometimes Dorcas, depending on what fic you're reading. Girls study with Remus and Peter a lot of the time because Remus and Peter are always constantly trying to do better because they have to work really hard and they're not effortlessly smart. This is around the year that it's mostly seen as, but mainly in All the Young Dudes, that Remus gets the nickname Moony because now they know that he's a werewolf and the moon, and Lupin's usually called Loony by the Slytherin, so they're like, oh my god, Moony. The thought process is very, very minimal here. Poppy Pomfrey now has to deal with all four of them rather than just Remus. So Homegirl needs a break. Moving on to 1973, third year for the Marauders, to visit Remus after every full moon in the hospital wing, like clockwork. Around this time that Sirius starts talking about how his parents are mentioning the rise of this dark wizard, or this guy that they want to show support of, and because Sirius is a Gryffindor and he's kind of been disgraced by his family, he's not really directly involved in these conversations, but a lot of the time it's seen that Regulus is being pulled into these conversations already, even though he's a baby. A+ parenting on their part. So it's around this time that Voldemort is like beginning to want to rise to power, and his ideals aren't seen as incredibly bad yet, but there is like mention of things starting to become a little bit tense at the Ministry, because there's a lot of conflicting opinions and thoughts on how the wizarding world should be run. The friendship between the girlies and the guys is flourishing, but Remus is now having to hide the fact that he is a werewolf from more people, and that becomes a little bit more hard when you get closer to other people. Around the year that it's headcanon that James, Sirius, and Peter start thinking about wanting to turn into anime guy. It's a super difficult spell, and like you have a registry and stuff, and really this entire thing is very much showcasing how transphobic JK racist is, but I'm not gonna digress there. I like get the idea because they know that McGonagall is an anime guest. That's not anything that's a secret. She's very open about that, and they're like, oh my god, we could do that. They're 13. They can't do this spell. It's incredibly complex and even difficult for adult wizards to do canonically. They tell Remus, and they're like, if we do this, we could be with you on full moons. And Remus is usually like, no, you don't know if it's gonna work. I don't want to kill you. You guys are my friends. And also, that would make me a child murderer. They then drop it. They don't. And spoiler, they don't drop it. And tensions between Sirius and his family kind of arise during this time. Tensions between Sirius and Regulus continue and fester, but Regulus is usually becoming his own person around this time because he's doing what he can to uphold the family name, since Sirius won't do it. He's made that very clear. We're in 1974, which is the fourth year for the Marauders. Usually around the time that James, Sirius, and Peter successfully are able to turn into anime guy. And they keep it a secret from Remus, obviously, but that they're doing the spell because he doesn't want them to. So they then reveal to Remus that they have successfully turned into anime guy illegally and succeeded with the spell, and now that they can hang out with him on full moons. So all four of them start to disappear every full moon, which makes it a lot more suspicious and harder to hide now that it's not just one of them that's getting sick every month. James turns into a stag, which is a male deer, Sirius turns into a dog, and Peter into a rat. Around the time that they start brainstorming nicknames, because they're working on the map like excessively and it's almost done, so they don't want to put their real names on the map, so they're like, oh my god, we need code names, because that would be so much cooler. The time that happens, like when they're like brainstorming names for each other, in every headcanon, fanfiction, whatever, wherever you see this, it's very silly, and the other variations of their nicknames are honestly hilarious. I giggle every time I see them. I think it's just so funny. It's such a fun little headcanon that exists within this fandom. Eventually do settle on Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. And now they start using the map to wreak even more havoc. God bless these Slytherins who just want to go to school and have no connection to the Marauders at all, but are getting tormented constantly because they don't just attack Snape anymore, they just attack the entire house. They all start disappearing every full moon, so Snape starts getting suspicious of all of them because he hates them so much because they bully him constantly, even though it is sometimes considered warranted in this fandom. They still do bully him, like, excessively to the fact that this man is traumatized. I hate Snape, but like, they traumatized him to the point where he becomes a shitty adult. Fourth year is also around the time that Sirius starts having his gay panic. Remus goes through like his bad boy era during this time. A lot of the time is what the fandom has decided. And Sirius is like, oh my god, he's wearing combat boots? What? The Casanova of Gryffindor Tower, everyone. And now we are entering fifth year, which is 1975 to 1976. And this is where a lot of lore starts to happen. They are 15, 16 years old. There's a lot of lore dropping in this time period of their 5th year, so strap in, buckle in. There's a lot of canon compliant stuff that is mentioned in this year especially. Marauders are still joining Remus on his full moons every full moon during this time where tensions between Sirius and Remus kind of get worse. Around the time that Sirius is also still dating Mary, so it's very complex. Gay panic. Sirius and Mary eventually break up within this year, and things are also very, very awkward. It's also the year that Sirius leaves the Black family, and it's usually headcanon to be around winter break, Christmas time, long after Sirius's 16th birthday, since his birthday is in November. Trigger warning for child abuse, by the way, going into this. During Christmas break, that a note arrives to the Potters from Regulus that Sirius is in danger, and James gets this note and kind of starts panicking. Sirius shows up in the Potter's house via Flu Network, completely disheveled, an absolute wreck. He has no shoes on. That's a very common headcanon to include because he leaves in such a hurry. Sirius leaving when he was 16 is canon. The reason why is not canon. It was made up by fans. The reason why Sirius leaves in such a hurry is because he was being tortured by his parents via the Cruciatus Curse because they wanted him to take the Dark Mark. But for some reason, Voldemort's only moral is that if you are going to take the Dark Mark, you have to take it voluntarily. And of course, Sirius is refusing because he does not want to be a Death Eater. He knows better than that. Tensions have begun to rise to a very high extent. This is when Voldemort is starting to get Death Eaters together. He is gaining followers within the pure blood families, and the Black family is usually one of the first ones to join him. Sirius leaves, of course, because he's being tortured by his parents. Again, A+ parenting from the Black family. Regulus helps him escape, and the Potters take Sirius in as basically one of their own children. From that point on, that Sirius is completely disowned by his family. Sirius actually says this in Order of the Phoenix when him and Harry are looking at the tapestry that his mother burned his portrait off of the tapestry right after he left because he refused to become a fascist wizard Nazi, but okay. Now that responsibility is falling upon Regulus for real this time. Jump forward a few months. Sirius is staying with the Potters now. They are now back at school. Remus's birthday has happened. They're all 16. Yippee. We have now arrived to probably one of the most important pieces of canon lore that this fandom decided to hold on to, and that is what is referred to as the prank. Origins has a lot of different variations to it, but the baseline of it that exists in canon is that Sirius tells Snape, who is right at this moment very suspicious of Remus and the rest of the Marauders, that Remus is a werewolf, and he wants to prove it because he thinks that if he can prove that Remus is a werewolf, he can get Remus thrown out of Hogwarts. Regardless of the reason why Sirius tells Snape, he tells Snape how to get past the Whomping Willow and tells him to go check it out on the next full moon, when Remus is transforming into a werewolf in the Shrieking Shack. James finds out about what Sirius did, and he tries to stop it. This is canon that James does save Snape during this time and gets him out of the Shrieking Shack in time before Remus's werewolf form can hurt Snape. That's why a lot of the time the fandom has had canon that the Animagus transformation happens a lot earlier in the timeline than when it doesn't canon, because how else would James be able to get past the Whomping Willow and also get in there and not die himself? It is possible to evade a werewolf in werewolf form as a human, as you see in Prisoner of Azkaban with Hermione and Harry. But again, that also had to do with the Time Turner. Often headcanon that James turns into prongs to get Snape out of the Shrieking Shack, which is insane to think about, that Snape is seeing not only a werewolf, but now a deer is trying to beat him up. Mans was having a very rough evening, let me tell you. Snape and James do both get hurt, but they are alive, and when Remus wakes up the next morning, he's in the shack by himself. The rest of the Marauders are not there, so he immediately knows that something is wrong. He then finds out that Sirius told Snape how to get past the Whomping Willow on the full moon and is incredibly betrayed. This then makes the other two marauders, James and Peter, to turn against Sirius and makes the friend group kind of fall apart, and it's a very angsty year with a lot of sadness and making Sirius feel guilty. It's the one piece of canon lore that this fandom held on to because it contains so much angst and they use it to their advantage. I'm telling you, not a single ounce of happiness exists in this fandom. You are always going to be sad. It was also around the time that people had canon that is when Remus and Lily became really good friends. Remus says in Prisoner of Azkaban when he is talking to Harry that he did not recognize Harry because he looks like James. He recognized him because he has Lily's eyes. And Lily is someone that he became very, very close to and he had no one else to turn to. It's headcanon that this is that time in which Remus and Lily become really good friends. And Lily then figures out that Remus is a werewolf and tells him, hey, by the way, I know because you disappear every full moon. And also it's really hard to hide that when we've become better friends over the last few years. But I support you and love you anyway. Probably one of the most devastating pieces of lore within this fandom because now James is like pissed at Sirius and now they live together. So they go home and James is still mad at him. It leads me into their 6th year, which is 1976 to 1977. That summer, James and Sirius eventually like make up because how can he be mad at the person who he considers his brother who is also living in his house? He can't be mad at him forever. They eventually make up, and Sirius and Remus do also make up eventually, and this is around the time that Wolfstar finally happens, and Sirius is no longer denying the fact that he likes men. It's also around the time that Regulus is kind of being pulled into more Death Eater stuff because Sirius is completely out of the picture. However, he is still just like going to school and existing. This is like when Regulus starts existing, even though it's a secret. This is also the year that Snape's worst memory occurs. It is when the Marauders are tormenting Snape. And this kind of is a difference of opinion as to when this happens. It's either the end of 5th year or the beginning of 6th year around this time, or the end of 6th year. It depends on how you want to look at it. In canon, I believe it does happen in the year 1976, but it's like the end of 5th year. And it's depending on what you're reading. A lot of the times this is seen to happen within their 6th year, and that is when James humiliates Snape. Him and Sirius levitate Snape upside down above a crowd, and his robes fall down, exposing him in his underwear in front of everyone. Lily tries to get James and Sirius to stop, and that is when Snape basically says, I don't need help from a mudblood, which is a wizard slur for muggle-borns, and that is when Lily and Snape's friendship implodes on itself. She does not accept his apology, even though he apologizes, and wants nothing to do with him anymore, and we support a girl who protects her peace. This is when Snape, really does, hone in on the fact that James is the worst and ruined his life and takes Lily away from him. We are now entering 7th year for the Marauders and 6th year for the Slytherin Skittles. Tensions within the wizarding world are definitely at an all-time high at this point, and that has kind of also transpired between the houses of Gryffindor and Slytherin because, Gryffindor good guys, Slytherin bad guys. That's just how she wrote this, even though that is not true. This is around the time, around the winter time, that Regulus takes on the Dark Mark and does what he's told to uphold this family image because, again, he is now the only black heir and realizes that he cannot escape. And he's still seeing James at this time and is trying to hide it from both James and also Sirius, but Sirius sees the Dark Mark on Regulus's arm on the train coming back to Hogwarts after the winter holidays, and he kind of freaks out. And then it's later down the line in this year that Sirius finds out about Regulus and freaks out and tells James that Regulus took the Dark Mark and that he's not who he thinks he is. So it's around this time that Regulus just falls apart because James is like, oh my god, he's evil. What? That's crazy. It's like, I can't save him. And this is also the year that Jilly starts kind of happening because James becomes, not ignorant and a dick, and he's just kind of becoming better, and also she realizes that maybe James was right, that Snape kind of sucks, because why would her best friend call her a slur. This is also around the time that Mary is attacked. It's also argued that this happened in their 6th year, but also it is also seen within their 7th year because of the rising ideology that is existing within the wizarding world. She's attacked by Mulciber, Barty Crouch, and Evan Rosier. Nothing really happens, comes from that. They don't get in trouble or anything, and it's just not a very good situation that she is experiencing. The Marauders end up leaving Hogwarts and officially joining the Order right out of school, and this is when Regulus officially joins the Death Eaters, and he does not go back to school in 1978. Now, leading me to 1978. The Marauders officially join the Order straight out of school. They become directly involved. Peter sometimes is seen as getting a job at the Ministry. James and Lily are together. It is usually at the end of that year, beginning of the next, that they get married. Moody is Dumbledore's second in command, so he is the one kind of in control of all of them, and he is sending them on missions. Sirius isn't really trusted at this time because he is a black, and so Moody is not very happy with him being in the Order, and he does not trust him whatsoever. James, Peter, Lily, Marlene, Mary, all of them are sent on various missions. During this time, we also see a lot more of Alice and Frank helping within the Order. The war is definitely starting to pick up. Death Eater numbers are starting to rise, and they are attacking Muggles and Muggle-born families, etc., etc. They are just being awful. Said Regulus does not return to Hogwarts. He is very much a Death Eater at this time. He is like knee-deep in the propaganda. This is also around the time that Alice and Frank get married, depending on what fic you're reading. They have a wedding, and it's really cute. So there's at least a little bit of joy and hope and happiness that exists during this time. It's not much, but it's there. Leading into 1979, attacks from Death Eaters by the Order are happening more frequently. It is around this year that it is known that there is a spy within the Order for the Death Eaters, and that is Peter, but we don't know that yet. Snape is now a double agent for the Order and also the Death Eaters at this time as well. Actually, when James and Lily get married and Lily finds out that she is pregnant with Harry towards the end of that year, and Alice finds out that she's pregnant with Neville. Also around this time that James's parents die. Like I said, attacks on the Order from the Death Eaters are definitely happening, like, a lot, so Order members are kind of dropping left and right. This is also around the time that Regulus figures out what Voldemort is doing with the Horcruxes, and he learns about the locket. This is when he takes Creature to the cave and switches out the Horcrux with the fake one, with the very famous note from him, which reads, "To the Dark Lord, I know I will be dead long before you read this, but I want you to know that it was I who discovered your secret. I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once more. R.I.B." So this is when, like, Regulus is like, I actually don't want to be fucking evil, and realize that I've just been making choices based off of what my family wants, and I hate that. So I'm actually going to try to defeat Voldemort and weaken him a little bit. However, Regulus does die in the process. It's headcanon that he drowns via Inferi in that cave once he starts drinking the potion and switches the lockets. Creature, however, is able to apparate out and hides the locket, even though Regulus is dead. Voldemort then finds out that Regulus has died because he goes to go check on the Horcruxes at some point and finds Regulus's dead body. Sirius does find out about Regulus's death, and that's a whole nother fun piece of angsty lore. So, we love this fandom so very much. We are now in 1980, and at the beginning of the year is when Sybil Trelawney has the prophecy in front of Dumbledore in the Hog's Head, and the prophecy reads as such. The one born with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of another, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th dies. Peter is a spy, and it is kind of like headcanon that Peter was there while the prophecy was being told, but Sybil didn't know that he was overhearing because of their, like, whole relationship thing that happens in this fandom. Harry is born on July 31st, and Neville is born on July 30th, so we now have two potential contenders of these children being the one to defeat Voldemort. Dumbledore then goes forth and tells both Lily and James and Alice and Frank that, hey, you have to, like, take precautions and be super safe, and like you can't be going places because there's a price on your child's head. But they haven't like gone into like strict lockdown like they do later on down the line. And so Voldemort then eventually towards the end of the year finds out about this prophecy and is like, dude, we have to kill these children. I cannot die. I am the Dark Lord. A baby cannot kill me. That's crazy. We are now in 1981. It is revealed that Harry is the one that Voldemort is going to go after. Snape is the one to tell Dumbledore that information. So James, Lily, and Harry are put into a strict lockdown where there's only one person within the Order that can know of their location, and that is their secret keeper. And they are going to go with Sirius being the secret keeper. However, they change it last minute before the spell is even cast and don't tell anyone that it has been swapped that Peter is the one to be the secret keeper. So Sirius knows that Peter is the secret keeper. James and Lily know that Peter is the secret keeper, but no one else knows that Peter is the secret keeper. And the reason that they do that is because they think that Peter isn't going to be the obvious choice. Therefore, no one's going to guess that it is Peter. But lo and behold, Peter is the one who is the spy for the Death Eaters in the Order, but they are unaware of that situation. Then that summer around August time that Marlene is killed. Her entire family is wiped out. Long after that Dorcas is killed by Voldemort personally. Again, that headcanon exists that the reason why he killed her personally is because of her connections to Barty and Evan, and as well as her love for Marlene is the reason why she becomes super powerful, because she then lost that person that she cares about most in the world. So Voldemort was like, you know what, this girl is going to be an issue. I'm just going to take her out myself and call it a day. It's also around this time that Evan dies. Moody kills him in battle, and Barty kind of goes insane. Again, headcanon, not canon, except for the fact that Evan does die around this time when there is a huge battle taking place. Then we get to October 31st, 1981, and this is when Lily and James are betrayed by Peter, and Voldemort shows up at their house and kills both of them. James canonically faces Voldemort without his wand. He opens the door and tells Lily and Harry to run, but he does not have his wand on him, so he pretty much dies immediately. Lily, however, goes upstairs and tries to hide Harry and protect him. Voldemort does kill Lily, and as you know, the curse goes through Harry and it hits him, but it doesn't kill him. Instead, Voldemort is the one to die. And it is Lily's love that protected Harry from dying via Voldemort's curse. Sirius shows up to their house and finds them both dead. And then he goes after Peter because he knows that Peter is the secret keeper and Peter's the only one who could have told Voldemort where they are. He goes after Peter and kind of like causes like a whole explosion. A bunch of muggles either die or get hurt. And then Peter cuts off his finger, turns into Wormtail, and scurries away in his rat form. And then everybody believes that Sirius is the one to kill Peter because he's gone. They also believe that Sirius was the secret keeper because the actual secret keeper disappeared. No one else knew that it was Peter. They all thought it was Sirius, so they also believe that Sirius is the one who is responsible for James and Lily's death. Therefore, he was the spy in the Order. Therefore, he gets sent to Azkaban wrongfully, which you learn about all in Prisoner of Azkaban. Snape shows up to their house and like cradles Lily's dead body, and it's like weird, and that entire thing like makes me super uncomfortable. But Snape is the one to then notify the Death Eaters that Voldemort is in fact dead, and it's not long after that the Longbottoms are then attacked by Barty and Bellatrix, and they are tortured with the Cruciatus curse until insanity and then sent to St. Mungo's. Neville is then sent to go live with his grandmother. Usually headcanoned around this time that is when Mary is obliviated. Different reasons as to why. One, she couldn't handle the grief, so she obliviates herself. Their headcanon is that Mary is the one to go to Dumbledore to offer to take Harry in, and Dumbledore is the one to obliviate her himself because he knows that Harry is going to be a pawn later on when Voldemort tries to come back. It's also headcanon that Remus was not around when Halloween happened. He was on a mission for the Order with the werewolf, so he comes back and learns all of this news and doesn't know the truth because, of course, he's told that Sirius is the one to kill Lily and James, and now the love of his life is in prison and also his friends are dead. So they're having a rough time in 1981. 1993 is when Prisoner of Azkaban happens. Sirius breaks out of Azkaban, him and Lupin are reunited, and then you find out the truth that Peter is not actually dead, that he, faked his death and was the actual secret keeper and the reason why Lily and James are dead, and Sirius was wrongfully convicted. In a universe where a truth serum exists, still don't understand that one, but whatever. It is around this time that Sirius is lying low at Lupin's. You know what happens. The rest, if you're a Harry Potter fan. I don't think I need to explain that any further. And that is the end of the timeline and everything you need to know about the Marauders. How we doing? There is honestly so much more to this fandom that I didn't even include in this video. If you want to, like, learn more about this fandom and you, like, are like, dude, like, this sounds so great. I can't wait to be depressed every time I see anything related to this fandom. I highly recommend just, like, deep diving on any social media app, but specifically, like, TikTok is where it's more popular and common and you'll see a lot of stuff. I mean, it's still very active on Tumblr and I think a little bit of Instagram. Best of luck to you if you continue to deep dive. So if you're just now entering this fandom and that's why you're watching this video, I hope this video was kind of some help to you to understanding a little bit. I'm sorry it was super long. I just wanted to make sure that this was kind of like an extensive deep dive into what this is. And if you are part of the fandom and there's something that, like, I missed that you think is, like, important, first of all, don't be mean about it. Second, just drop it in the comments so people can go ahead and read it if they want to. I know there's a lot of things that I didn't include in here because if I did, we would quite literally be here for the next, like, day. There are layers to this fandom that have more lore attached to them that if people want me to make separate videos about, I'm more than happy to because I had so much fun making this video. It was a lot of fun. It took a lot more time than I wanted it to, but it was exciting and I had a good time doing it. So remember to be nice to each other. If people have differing opinions than you, don't be mean, okay? It does nothing. Being mean does nothing but make other people upset. Be a nice person. If you did watch this all the way through, first of all, thank you. Probably gonna be the longest video I've ever made, just because of the content that I'm covering. I put a lot into this, so thank you for watching this all the way through. That is crazy. You're insane. So am I. We're on, like, equal levels of ridiculousness right now. The next few videos are gonna be more focused on, like, film and books again, so I might do another deep dive into another fandom soon, because this was a lot of fun. I've been a fangirl forever. That is, like, a very prominent part of who I am as a person. Also, thank you so much for 300 subs. Literally the last video I was thanking for 250 and the video before that 200, and it's just, like, rapidly growing, which is crazy. So thank you again. That's insane to me. So thank you so much. As always, my active social media links are down below, so you can find me in various other places if you choose to. Remember to like this video and subscribe if you aren't already. Do something nice for yourself, and remember you are loved, especially by me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.